wasn't one strike, two strikes, three strikes.
This is called the fog of war.
He's pinning this on Bradley.
An illegal, wildly immoral act, and he is shifting the blame. It's the opposite of the buck stops here, and Secretary of Defense does not have your back.
This is like the biggest episode of Real Housewives, but military edition and war crimes and whatever else that are going on. We're going to walk you through from the beginning till kind of how this is playing out. A lot of people are trying to get me to jump on this early, but we're hearing more reports, more news come out, and I think that is important. Now, let's start this off. September, you had the boat incident where you had people that were trying to take powdery things over to the United States, and the administration, during all of their bouts of saying what they were going to do, they were like, we're going to stop drugs coming in, and this is what it was. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I mean, we've done that with Coast Guard, stuff like that. Showed a video about that previously, talking about it. Then what we're seeing is we had all of those politicians that came out and were like, yeah, pretty much you guys got to follow your legal orders, and you should not obey illegal orders.
Laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
And I'm like, okay, where's this coming from? No one's actually doing anything illegal. And then, well, bam! Now we're like, oh, there was a double tap of a Venezuelan ship that was going on? Weird. Why not just say that if that incident had already happened? People are correlating. That's why that video was dropped. Now, to be fair, there are some people that are talking about the timeline of initially annotating, did this happen? Let's give context that they were saying the boat was hit once and then they were disabled. Nothing was bad other than they were not operational anymore. Then they were hit again and the survivors were no longer surviving, and they were saying this is now war crime. First, let's start off with President Trump, where I believe in the timeline he was the first one annotated making any statements about whether this happened or didn't.
Say that, and I believe it. You don't know the two men. The second strike. He said he didn't do it. He said he didn't.
Would you be okay with that if he did?
He said he didn't do it, so I don't have to make. Number one, I don't know that happened. And Pete said he did not want them. He didn't even know what people were talking about. So we'll look into it. But no, I wouldn't have wanted that second strike. The first strike was very lethal. It was fine, and if there were two people around, but Pete said that didn't happen.
Does that make you?
I have great.
A very clear one. I can tell you that was definitely not artificial intelligence. I watched it live. We knew exactly who was in that boat. We knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew exactly who they represented. And that was Tren de Aragua, a narco-terrorist organization.
So what you're saying is he said, I saw all of it. Okay. So it's like, okay, like big deal. We didn't really think of it. And now we're getting into the semantics where people are like, did you see it or did you not? Did you? And that's because the press secretary for the White House had gone on to say some of these statements, essentially saying it was confirmed that Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, did or did not give the order. And this is what she had to say.
President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made it clear that presidentially designated narco-terrorist groups are subject to lethal targeting in accordance with the laws of war. With respect to the strikes in question on September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated. And I would just add one more point to remind the American public why these lethal strikes are taking place. Because this administration has designated these narco-terrorists as foreign terrorist organizations. The president has a right to take them out if they are threatening the United States of America and if they are bringing illegal narcotics that are killing our citizens at a record rate, which is what they are doing. And under the previous administration, there was enough fentanyl trafficked into our country to kill every American man, woman, and child many times over. And so that's why you've seen a drastic difference in this administration's policy with respect to the last, and it's one of the many reasons the American public reelected this president and support this Secretary of War in conducting these strikes.
Oh my God, they're pitting it on the admiral. They're pitting it on him. No one else is going to take responsibility. And that's it. That's legally how it's going to work. There's no due process. They're done.
Admiral Mitch Bradley is an American hero, a true professional, and has my 100% support. I stand by him in the combat decisions he has made on the September 2nd mission and all others since. America is fortunate to have such men protecting us. When this Department of War says we have the back of our warriors, we mean it. Okay, let me just translate this into he's pinning this on Bradley. Okay, he's saying that's what that's about, right? I mean, where do you see this headed?
He is passing the buck. He sort of sees the freight train that is coming, right? That both Republicans and Democrats are coming to the conclusion that this was an illegal, wildly immoral act, and he is shifting the blame. It's the opposite of the buck stops here. And boy, it's a chilling signal to everyone in the chain of command that the Secretary of Defense does not have your back.
And I'm like, whoa, let's pump the brakes here. Let's pump the brakes. You're catching too much here. There's more to this. And that appears because now there's been some rebuttal from these circumstances of news outlets and kind of what they were spinning the story as, and we're going forward with it. It does appear that the president and Secretary of War have actually talked about this and defended themselves from some of these claims.
It wasn't one strike, two strikes, three strikes. Somebody asked me a question about the second strike. I didn't know about the second strike. I didn't know anything about people. I wasn't involved in it. I knew they took out a boat. But I would say this, they had a strike. I hear the gentleman that was in charge of that is extraordinary. He's an extraordinary person. I'll let Pete speak about him. But Pete was satisfied. Pete didn't know about second attack having to do with two people. I guess Pete would have to speak to it. I can say this. I want those boats taken out. And if we have to, we'll attack on land also, just like we attack on sea. And there's very little coming in by sea. I think we've knocked out over 90% of it. There's very little, and I understand that. There's very little. We're saving hundreds of thousands of lives with those pinpoint attacks. It's an amazing thing when you see a boat going along, and, you know, a lot of the press would like to say they're not. You see the boat. They're not maybe drugs. You see these boats. First of all, who has 5 engines on the back of a boat going in weird directions and loaded up with lots of white containers? They're bags of things. No, they've done an amazing job.
They bring drugs, and you mentioned it, Mr. President, poisoning, an intentional poisoning of the American people, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. So the president had the courage to designate these cartels as designated terrorist organizations. Now, a number of us here served in the military and spent 20 years fighting terrorists like Al-Qaeda and ISIS on the other side of the world. How do you treat Al-Qaeda and ISIS? Do you arrest them and treat them, pat them on the head and say, don't do that again? Or do you end the problem directly by taking a lethal, kinetic approach? And that's the way President Trump has authorized the War Department to look at these cartels. The rigorous, the intel, the legal, the evidence-based way that we're able to, with sources and methods that we can't reveal here, that make sure that every one of those drug boats is tied to a designated terrorist organization. We know who's on it, what they're doing, what they're carrying. All these white bales are not Christmas gifts from Santa. This is drugs running on 4-motor fast boats or submarines that we've also struck. No one's fishing on a submarine. And I have empowered them to make that call. Now, the first couple of strikes, as you would, as any leader would want, you want to own that responsibility. So I said, I'm going to be the one to make the call after getting all the information and make sure it's the right strike. That was September 2nd. There's a lot of intelligence that goes into that, building that case and understanding that, a lot of people providing information. I watched that first strike live. As you can imagine, at the Department of War, we got a lot of things to do. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting. A couple of hours later, I learned that that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do, and by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire.
has exploded and fire or smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war.
So a couple things to take away from that. Yes, I understand that he says he was not in the room the entire time. He left after this other one happened, and that timeline is not really able to be confirmed or denied by the admiral that actually is being talked about from this. On top of that, I think a lot of people think of bad guys, terrorism or whatever, as like red coats versus blue coats. And you're like, that's not really how the world works right now. There's a lot of nuance of that, and they know that, which is why a lot of these kind of spins on stories and things that we've seen in the past have always been an issue. And winning hearts and minds and all that kind of stuff has really become kind of the new terrain of warfare. Now, on top of that, it does seem that the Secretary of War has been very supportive of all of these that have happened. He even posted this photo on his X account where it says, Franklin targets narco-terrorist, and then shows him shooting from a helicopter onto some boats down below. On contrary to this, there are people that are worried that this is war crimes. This is why the former admiral of Southcom essentially had not continued service and had resigned as an admiral, was maybe because of this following it. But there's even a general right now that's talked about some of what would have to go through for this process.
Are swimming around after the boat begins to sink. It specifically would be a war crime if you shot them. So I mean, this is even given as an anecdotal example in a Department of Defense manual on the laws of war. We don't even know if we're legally in a war. This appears to be another dynamic of, are we in a criminal action or counter criminal action against drug smugglers, which is a crime? Are we in a war against narco-terrorism, which hasn't been declared? And if you are, then an objective of hitting small boats with drugs on them would not probably be the campaign plan that a 4-star general would put together. It would be like a tactical battle against a squad versus trying to get to where the sources of these things are, and they're hanging off to the side. When you have someone who has been incapacitated like that, the formal term is hors de combat, which means they are outside the realm of combat. They have been become a casualty or someone who can no longer fight. And they are no longer have the ability to be struck by fire. It's considered both an illegal and an immoral act. So all of these things combine to that. A military commander may perceive that he was given an order that wasn't quite in the directive, but that has to be proven in a hearing or a court-martial. And you then have to take a look at not only the leaders who executed the event, if it's determined to be a criminal act, but also who contributed to those acts.
What I have to say is, no one's asking the most basic question. Why are we talking about this in December? This happened in September, like 2+ months ago right now. So are we just now getting all the surveillance and data feed on the drones that were operating above? Like, why is this now a thing? And it does appear that people are trying to find answers anywhere, even with Speaker of the House.
My assessment of this, my understanding is that most of the people that have looked at this, at least in a preliminary review, say that the admiral who ordered the second strike thought it was necessary to complete the mission. He's a highly decorated, highly respected admiral in the Navy, and he made that call. And so, we're going to have to look at that. I'm sure Congress has a right to look at it. I don't know how much of the tape should be released, because I'm not sure how much is sensitive with regard to national security and all that. I haven't had a chance to review it, so I'm not going to prejudge it. But I will say that, it's not an unprecedented thing. One of the things I was reminded of this morning is that under Barack Obama, President Obama, he had, I think, over 550 drone strikes on people who were targeted as enemies of the country, and nobody ever questioned it, okay? And secondary strikes are not unusual. It has to happen if a mission is going to be completed. So
I know a lot of people are upset they're not getting answers right now, but the committee is going to go over this and do actual legal work to go into this and make reports and show timelines and investigate and do the process that should be the case. But a lot of people think this is going to roll downhill to the person even pushing a button or whatever else, because they're saying it was unlawful. And a lot of people are debating about lawful, unlawful anyway right now, because essentially people are saying that it is too minute to know if you are on an aircraft or something in that very moment, what is happening outside from that purview of I am doing this. But, you know, I guess who called the code red, if you will. But let me know what you guys think about the situation down below, because realistically, I do think this is an unfolding situation that's going to take months, if not more, until we find out a full report on what actually happened. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below.